Hey everybody, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I'm Greg. Today I thought it would be fun to make some predictions for the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. The prize will be announced on April 15th. This will be the prize for books that were released in 2018. And, they have some really off-the-wall picks every once in a while. Nobody saw Tinkers coming the year that won. It had not even been reviewed by the New York Times when it won the prize. So if I don't mention the book that eventually wins on this list, please don't judge me. All I'm doing here is having some fun. And it'd be interesting to see what you think. Is there anything you hope wins? Is there anything you think will win? Let's talk about it. But here are some books that I think have a shot and will definitely be in the conversation. The first one I want to talk about is an author who has been on my TBR for about a decade. I have one of her books right here, The Flamethrowers. It is Rachel Kushner, and the book that she released last year is called The Mars Room. Now, I have not read Rachel Kushner, so I haven't read this novel about a woman who is serving consecutive life sentences in a women's correctional facility, but I've heard a lot about it. It got a lot of buzz. I had a lot of people talking. I've heard a lot about it here on BookTube. I think she's been an author that some people talk about for a long time. And I don't have any scientific proof to back this up, but I feel like a lot of the time somebody who wins the Pulitzer Prize has previously published a book that has been talked about in critical circles. Think Jeffrey Eugenides. He published The Virgin Suicides and then one for Middlesex. Think Junot Diaz, who published Drown and then one for The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. Rachel Kushner has not only Flamethrowers, which was one of the biggest books of the year it was published, but she also wrote Telex from Cuba. She's guaranteed to be an author that people will talk about if she releases a book that year. So The Mars Room is definitely in that conversation. I will say, though, that The Mars Room seems to be a bit of a love it or hate it title. So that could work for it, could work against it. If the fiction jury for the Pulitzers is in the love it camp, we might have a winner. Otherwise, all bets are off. One thing we can't deny, Rachel Kushner probably has a good chance of catching the fiction jury's eyes. Now, the author of my favorite book from 2018 could fit into that same category as Rachel Kushner. She is Rebecca Makai. The book is The Great Believers. Rebecca Makai has published 3 books before The Great Believers, all of which have earned a degree of critical success. The caveat there is that none of them achieved the type of critical success that Rachel Kushner's previous books have. I follow books and have for a very long time, and I had not heard of Rebecca Makai until I read The Great Believers. So I kind of used this to discover her backlist. And if that's the case, then her previous work might not help her. But the book really stands for itself. It is, without a doubt, one of the best books of 2018 in my mind, and I've seen a lot of people in BookTube celebrate it as well. It was one of the New York Times top books of the year. It was a finalist for the National Book Award, although I don't think the National Book Award is a great bellwether. It's an ALA notable title. It has a lot going for it. And one of the most impressive things about this book is the way it weaves big topics like World War I or AIDS or terrorism into quote-unquote small novel ideas like family or grief. And those small novel things like family and grief tend to win Pulitzer Prizes. That's kind of how Tinkers caught their eye. So I think this one has a really good shot. It's my personal favorite on the list, and I think what Rebecca Makai does here is nothing short of astonishing. So that's The Great Believers by Rebecca Makai. Now, if any debut novelist has a shot, it's definitely Tommy Orange, who published There There. Now, this was also one of the New York Times top 10 books of the year. And, this electrifying series of interlocked stories set the literary world on fire in 2018. He's definitely at least known to the fiction jury. And, the way he smartly subverts the typical way Native Americans are written about in fiction can't be denied. It's unassailable. And one of the criteria for the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction is that it's by an American author and dealing with American life. There is no novel that deals with American life more directly than There There in 2018, I would argue. Now, there are some who shrug at the fuss over this book, so there's a chance that the fiction jury will also do the same. But this seems like a smart person's bet, and like I said, there's no denying that it will at least be known to the fiction jury. By the way, I keep saying the fiction jury. So if you don't know how the Pulitzer Prize is set up, there is a fiction jury, usually made up of 3 people. They actually are the ones who go through all of the submitted books for the year, and they nominate 3 books. Those 3 books go to the Pulitzer Board, which oversees all of the Pulitzer Prizes, not just for fiction. And the Pulitzer Board will then select the actual winner. The jury makes a recommendation, and usually the board goes with that, but everything that happens behind closed doors is kind of covert and secret. We don't know how it actually works. But that is why I keep mentioning the fiction jury. The board makes the ultimate decision, but the jury is the one who picks the 3 nominees that get sent to them. So, now that we've got that covered, let's talk about someone who is a storied American writer and a 2-time finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, Dennis Johnson. Dennis Johnson, so not only is he a 2-time finalist, not only is he a celebrated American author, Dennis Johnson died, unfortunately, in 2017. This book, which is a collection of short stories, and I believe he had not published a book of short stories since his cult favorite book, Jesus' Son, which was published a long time ago. So this is kind of a return to form to what made him famous in the first place. This was published posthumously. I'm sorry, that was a really long, tortured way of saying that this book was published posthumously. So he has 2 previous Pulitzer Prize finalists, like I said, Train Dreams and Tree of Smoke. Train Dreams, of course, was nominated alongside Karen Russell and David Foster Wallace in that year that oddly did not pick a winner. So there you see the fiction jury picked 3 books, sent them to the Pulitzer Board, which did not pick a winner. Hopefully that will not happen again, because there was a lot of blowback when that did happen. So really, when you get down to it, what better way could the Pulitzer Board celebrate the life of this celebrated author, and who's been on the perimeter of the Pulitzer Prize twice before, than to award him the prize that got away from him? So consider Dennis Johnson. Then we have to talk about another person who has been a finalist before. In this case, only once. That's Richard Powers and The Overstory. Now, Powers was a finalist for 2006's The Echo Maker, and he's a celebrated American novelist. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not read Richard Powers because his books, well, being honest, they kind of sound like a slog. I've heard that they're really dense and sometimes difficult, but there's no denying that The Overstory is a dense brick of a novel. It's really long, and it's about trees, and I believe it follows 7 different characters, so there's not one overall narrative. So given all of those things, it's been really celebrated. I mean, it was even a finalist for the Man Booker Prize, so you really can't deny it. He's an author that you can't really leave out of the conversation. And like I said, he's been a finalist before. There are a lot of people who love this book. There are a lot of people who hate this book. So where that will end up, we'll have to wait and find out on April 15th. Then we come to An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, which has been blessed by Oprah. It feels like it needs to be part of the conversation. It is one of the best-selling books of last year. Obviously, it was blessed by Oprah. And really, a novel about the wrongful conviction of an African-American man told through the framework of a relationship. It can't be more timely or political. And like I said, the Pulitzer has a history of liking complicated family stories about grief. And this is the story of people whose marriage didn't have a chance because he goes to jail within the first year that they are married. Maybe it's that I really didn't like this book. I can't make myself think of it as a serious contender. But like I said, I think it's something that needs to be part of the conversation. And who knows, at the end of the day, maybe it will be a surprise winner. We'll find out. Now, I've told you that the Pulitzer Board tends to like a good family drama, and perhaps no novel gave you more family drama in 2018 than The House of Broken Angels by Luis Alberto Urrea. I butchered that. I'm sorry. So this is a novel about a sprawling Mexican-American family, and because it's about a Mexican-American family, it's inherently political in the Trump era. It's also about a dying patriarch. And like I said, grief and death are something that the Pulitzer Board has definitely celebrated before. Now, because the jury rotates, it doesn't mean that will be celebrated this year, but it definitely ticks some boxes that have been ticked many times before. This is a book that's on my TBR. It was just part of the tournament of books. It feels like a contender. It's something that could have flown under the radar. Not a whole lot of people talked about this book in 2018, but it's consistently been showing up, and coming up, and we'll see what happens. And another book that has kind of flown under the radar of massive success, but has earned some key signatories and awards and notable things, is Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. This was one of the New York Times top 10 books last year. It's come up again and again here on BookTube, so maybe I'm trapped in an echo chamber, so it feels like it has more of a chance than it actually does. This book has a highly unique format. It's told in 3 different sections, and from what I've heard, I haven't read it yet, those 3 different sections don't always correlate back to each other. So it's not really like a series of interlocked stories where there's a lot of different things happening, but they connect to each other. It's kind of using 3 different scenarios to get at overarching themes. And from what I've heard, it's really smartly done, but I have heard other people say that those distinct sections and the way that the book is structured and the way it's so different from other books has alienated them. So, will the Pulitzer jury and the Pulitzer board be swayed by the inventiveness and, the skill that is clearly at play here? It's even blurbed by Zadie Smith on the back, so it's got a lot of literary credibility going for it. It may be a hard sell for the Pulitzer board. I don't know. But there have been some quirky fiction winners in the last 15 years. Again, think of The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, think of The Orphan Master's Son, and they have celebrated books that play with the structure of a novel and what a novel can be. Think A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan, which is a fantastic book. And this could very well be one of them. I really wouldn't be surprised at all to see it in the mix. It does feel like it's more likely to be a nominee than an actual winner. But like I said, I really wouldn't be surprised to see this one upset the field and take it home. In an era when Trump's president and Green Book is winning Best Picture at the Oscars, I don't know if a debut short story collection that heavily deals with race and social injustice can catch a break. But if that's still possible, then Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, I hope I said that right, really could have a shot. This book landed directly on my TBR when it came out. I haven't read it yet. And if it wins, it could be a thrilling upset. But I can't help but think that this book has constantly been having its thunder stolen by other books in 2018. The debut that everybody was talking about last year was They're There by Tommy Orange. The best-selling novel about social injustice is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. It feels like Friday Black has constantly been getting crowded out of the conversation. So April 15th will either be more of the same, or it will be Friday Black's big moment in the sun. And there you have it. Those are the novels that I've picked out as the most likely finalists, and hopefully the winner will be among them. In terms of my actual prediction, I gotta go with my heart. Like I said, I think Asymmetry has a really good shot at upsetting the field, but I gotta go with my heart. The Great Believers was my favorite book of 2018. I think it's really well done. I've heard about it talked a lot on BookTube, so maybe I've trapped myself in an echo chamber, and I'm hearing more good things about this book than actually are out there. But I really think it has a chance. I think it does a lot of clever things and just puts together this really amazing picture where it talks about how grief echoes through time. Like I said, I mentioned World War I when I talked about it earlier. It goes back and it talks about losing generations of men and how that grief carries and causes ripples throughout time because it doesn't just go away. And then it talks about the AIDS epidemic very heavily. That's one of the main plot points of the book. And again, it skips to near present day where it deals with terrorism, but the impact of the AIDS epidemic is still being felt. I just think it's a beautiful book. I really love it very much. And maybe it's wishful thinking, but this is going to be my prediction. Got to go with my heart. So, what do you think will win the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction for 2018? If you have some things that you want to win or you think will win, please let me know. If you think there's anything I foolishly left off this list, let me know that as well. And I'm going to be sticking with the Pulitzer theme a little bit this week. I'll talk about my favorite Pulitzer Prize winners, some Pulitzer Prize winners that have been on my TBR, and some Pulitzer Prize winners I really didn't like. So be sure to let me know what you think of it in any of those categories I mentioned. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And if you are already subscribed, thank you for that. I'll be back. Until then, happy reading.